Unemployed and seen as a burden, I moved back home until my mum threw my bags at me and kicked me out. That moment changed everything. Ethan is my name. I'm 28 years old, and I didn't choose to live in my parents' guest room until about a month ago. To be honest, I would have been anywhere else if I could. However, plans don't always work out. I got a good job at a mid-sized software company after earning my degree in computer technology. Then the epidemic struck. I was among the first people laid off when the company downsized. I applied to hundreds of jobs over the course of the following year and a half. There were interviews, but none of them lasted. My finances eventually ran out, and returning home was my only remaining choice. I assumed it would be short-term. So did my parents. It wasn't terrible at first. James, my father, was always more of a don't ask, don't tell type of person. But it was my mother, Susan, who made sure I felt the impact of every piece of food I consumed and every light switch I turned. At least once a week, she would comment, "This isn't a hotel." If I left a cup in the sink, she would sigh loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. I initially attributed it to stress. However, the passive-aggressive remarks quickly evolved into outright criticism. As she wiped the already spotless kitchen counter for the 6th time that morning, she would remark, "You know, your cousin Emily just bought a house, and she's 2 years younger than you, or you're still here at your age, which is really sad. By the time we were 28, your father and I were raising you." I made an effort to assist. I volunteered to mow the grass, cook, clean, and fix the router when it malfunctioned. Where I could, I worked as a freelancer, creating websites for nearby companies and assisting a family friend with the launch of an online store. I wasn't just watching TV while sprawled out on the couch, but it didn't matter to her. I remained the leech. The fact that my younger brother, Noah, was their heir apparent didn't help either. He's 24 years old, lives in a downtown high-rise, works in finance, and makes sure everyone knows it. Except on holidays or when Mom implores him to join her for supper, he seldom ever comes. However, when he enters, it's like Moses parting the Red Sea. All of a sudden, my mum feels happier. Her voice becomes pleasant and upbeat. "My baby is there. You look really toned. Are you exercising?" In the meantime, I'm trying to blend in by hiding in the corner with a trash bag full of recyclables. I sensed it building when Noah stopped by for supper one evening. They always treated me like I didn't belong, so I was setting the table, putting mismatched plates down with the same carelessness I've become used to. Noah hardly gave me a look. He mentioned the expensive gas and how fortunate some people are to not have to commute. I didn't fall for it. However, once he said something, Mom gave him a drink and burst out laughing. "Have you even tried applying for real jobs lately?" she questioned, turning to face me. My chest constricted. She didn't care that I had already told her about my 2 interviews that week. Noah added his voice. He didn't even look at me when he continued. "You know, at some point, it stops being bad luck and starts being bad choices. That was the night everything broke. I didn't shout. Nothing was thrown at me. Just like I was 12 again, I picked up my plate, went back to the kitchen, and ate while standing at the counter. In the dining room, I could hear them giggling. I heard some of the phrases, but they were hazy. Can't cuddle forever, needs to grow up, and embarrassing at this point. The following day, Mom entered the room as I was working on a freelancing project that involved revamping the website of a nearby bakery while sitting in the den with my laptop open. She didn't knock. I sensed something was coming when she crossed her arms and stood at the doorway. "You must begin making rent payments," she stated bluntly. I gave a nod. I had heard this before. I promised to assist once I finished this site. They're making payments. Maybe someday is not what I mean. Now I'm speaking today. I looked at her, perplexed. "You want me to use money? I don't have to write you a check?" "No, Ethan, I'd like you to mature. We've had enough of this. We've gone above and beyond. You are merely a leech that feeds on us." I was surprised by how hard the word hit me. Leech. As if I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe, she stated it with a disgusted expression. She turned and began hauling a duffel bag out of the closet. Before I could even respond, she rushed back into the room, tossed the bag at my feet, and yelled, "Go leech somewhere else," before I could even react. I refrained from arguing. I refrained from crying. After packing my laptop, charger, and toothbrush, I zipped up my bag and headed off. Not a word. I could hear the word leech echoing after me down the driveway. I spent some time couch surfing, first with my friend Daniel, and then for a few days with my ex, who graciously allowed me to remain with him while I worked things out. But despite how frightening it was, the time alone motivated me to give it my all. I started working as a freelancer more, and even assisted a local artist in creating an online store to sell her prints. Suddenly, one evening, I received a message on LinkedIn from a recruiter who had viewed my freelance portfolio. I was interviewing for a remote job with a tech startup within a week, and I was hired. It was a good wage, enough to begin taking back my life, but not Silicon Valley money. The finest aspect, complete benefits, and the ability to work remotely were included. Thus, I took a step that even startled me. I purchased a small studio apartment with the money I had been saving from freelancing, but it was mine. I couldn't be separated from it by anyone. I couldn't be considered a burden. I moved in about 3 weeks later. I saw that my dad had called while I was doing a project. I let it go to voicemail because I hadn't heard from him since I left. Not even a "how are you?" Then there was another call. Then a text. "What caused our account to be frozen by the bank?" I blinked. What? Then I recalled something that had been on my mind for weeks. Dad had requested me to assist him in changing their joint banking arrangement back when I was unemployed. He wanted me to set up their internet access, mobile banking, and, most importantly, connect their account with their tax software, since he was sick of driving to the bank, and I was skilled with technology. I had guided them at every turn. My phone number and email were listed as recovery contacts on their joint account. I even served as a secondary administrator, not to make any purchases but to troubleshoot in case something went wrong. Yes, that access was still available. I took a while to respond. I just sat there and gazed at the message. My dad was fumbling with the bank app, and my mum was pacing as they sat at the dining room table, perhaps even contacting the hotline, only to be informed that they would require access from a secondary contact to restore control due to a verification lockout. I typed up a response at that point. Ask the leech. Not a single emoji, no justification, only those 3 words, and everything detonated less than an hour later. My phone began vibrating once more before I had a chance to prepare lunch. My mother missed 3 calls in less than 5 minutes this time. Then the text began. Mom texted, "Ethan, this isn't funny. Call your dad back. We can't pay the credit card bill. Are you really doing this to us after everything we've done for you? Fix this." I didn't respond. I had leverage for the first time in years, and I had no intention of wasting it. Retaliation for the sake of cruelty didn't interest me. However, I desired responsibility. They never cared to acknowledge the version of me that I wanted them to see. The person who kept their household together in the background, did things like pay their bills online, update their antivirus software, remind them to file their taxes on time, troubleshoot their Wi-Fi, and even flag fraud charges on their card before they noticed, was not the lazy burden they had imagined. To them, however, I was merely a resentful freeloader. I received a call that night from an unknown number. I gave an instinctive response. "Ethan." My dad was attempting to sound composed, but his voice seemed strained to me. "We must access our bank account, you see," they said. "It's locked." "You are classified as the secondary administrator," they said. "I have no idea what you did, but—" "I did nothing," I stated calmly. After several unsuccessful attempts to log in, the security system automatically locked it. All right, it's okay. Simply assist us in unlocking it." A pause occurred. I didn't answer. He paused. "Please." Like a foreign language he hadn't spoken in years, the word came out clumsily. "Yes," I said. "But first, I would like to discuss something." "Keep quiet, for example. Why did your wife call me a leech, hurl my belongings, and yell at me in front of Noah?" One more pause. "Ethan, let's not." "No, we will. Do you want me to tidy up your mess once more? After that, you will pay attention, not speak." Not an excuse, simply pay attention. The person on the other end sighed quietly. He didn't hang up, though. I didn't request to relocate. I had no desire to return to that house, but I tried my best to assist. I prepared food. I did some cleaning. I made things right. I earned money, just enough to cover my personal expenses and give you gas money in case the car broke down. I was treated like a stray dog at your dinner table, in spite of all of that. "Ethan, I'm not finished." A slight crack came to my voice. Years of annoyance were rising to the surface of my throat. I had swallowed everything back. She called me a leech every time they phoned me. I was booted out like trash by her. You simply stood there. You permitted her. He didn't answer. She treated me like a helpless loser and humiliated me in front of Noah. The fact is, though, your bank account, because I've been the one maintaining it that way, everything has been going nicely. Without me, you had no idea how to change your password. All right, he confirmed. Your point has been made. No, I haven't. I got out of my chair and began to walk about my tiny flat. While I was already on the ground, you two pretended that I was a failure who needed to be kicked. You need me now. Long pause again. Yes, he acknowledges at last. We do. Those 3 words, simplicity, struck me more strongly than I had anticipated, and not in a positive manner. It's more akin to an unexpected windstorm that leaves you gasping for air, because I knew at that moment that they didn't give a damn about my difficulties. Only when I was helpful did they notice me. I wasn't cruel, though. I wouldn't be spiteful enough to ignore invoices. However, I also wasn't going to ignore this as I always did. I proposed terms. I'd get the account unlocked, but first, I wanted each of them to apologize. An actual one, in person. Furthermore, it goes beyond simply murmuring sorry as Mom pretended nothing had happened, and Dad fidgeted. I desired recognition. I also desired space for at least 6 months. No favor requests will be accepted. Don't feel guilty. No unexpected visits. Additionally, I would permanently remove myself from all of their financial tools as an administrator. I said, from now on, you can handle your own banking or ask Noah for assistance. My father sighed once more. This won't sit well with her. I didn't enjoy being kicked out of my childhood home. A brief hush fell. I'll speak with her. The call was cut off. My hands were shaking, part rage, a little adrenaline, a little depressed. I had never communicated with my father in such a manner. Not once. I didn't feel horrible, though. Not now. It took 2 days to receive a response. This time, it was a brief, strangely formal email from my mother. There was no signature, and it began with, I realized I said things I shouldn't have. It concluded with, we hope you're doing well, Mom. No love. However, I received what I requested. I quickly deleted myself from the account after unlocking it. Then, for a week, I blocked their number just to breathe, not to punish them, to reflect. Then the actual fallout began. The problem is that everyone realizes how much they depended on them. When the leech leaves and the person performing all the invisible labor is removed, I learned what transpired next from my cousin Sophia's Instagram story, not from a phone call or a knock on my door. While at Grandma's place for Sunday breakfast, she had captured a brief boomerang film. Mom was seated rigidly at the far end of the table, her lips pursed like she had just bitten into a lemon, her wine glass unopened. My father, who appeared to have recently learned how to use the internet and failed, was by her side, massaging his temples. Noah, meanwhile, sat across from them, a troubled face replacing his arrogant smile. That was novel. The headline read, when the group project lost the only person who knew how to do anything. Family drama. I sent her a direct message asking what happened. Your mum has been trying to figure out how to log into her online banking for a week, she said quickly. This morning, she locked the account once more. Noah somehow made it worse when he came over to mend it. You intentionally sabotaged it, she says. Now, I was genuinely astounded by how quickly the responsibility had come back to me as I gazed at the computer. However, I was unable to feel even anger, simply exhausted, the kind of fatigue that is more profound than sleep, because it was back there. Regardless of how much I contributed, regardless of how silently I labored in the background, I became the antagonist in their tale the instant things went wrong. But it didn't end there. My dad apparently discovered he hadn't saved the login information for the new system I had set up for them last year after I had removed myself from their tax filing access. Customer service requested him to confirm his most recent return, which I had of course sent to him via email with a password stored in a private Google Drive that he no longer had access to. If Noah hadn't made the wise decision to start fresh and attempted to open a new account using my dad's social security number, it might have been recoverable on its own. The system locked everything, including his HSA portal, online statements, and tax software. After identifying it as possible identity fraud, they were unable to obtain a dime. With the excitement of someone watching a soap opera unfold in real life, Sophia told me this. Your mum told Grandma that she thinks you hacked them out of revenge. I simply replied to their text. I forewarned them. I had to. I gave them a clear, hard, and boundary-defeating warning. Not dangers, not games, limitations. They also acted as though I was bluffing. My apartment door was knocked on a week later. Before I even peered through the peephole, I knew it was them. When someone stood in the hallway of my building, there was a particular type of echo, heavy, slow, and unhurried footsteps. Slowly, I opened the door. My parents were standing there. My dad wore a slightly crooked tie, as if he had dressed quickly, and my mum held her pocketbook like a shield. They didn't say anything. I moved out of the way. "Save it if you're here to shout." They entered. Before my mother cleared her voice, there was a complete minute of stillness. "We need your assistance. She told me to go leech somewhere else and tossed out my bags 3 weeks ago." Now she was standing in my small flat, glancing at the simple IKEA furnishings and half-eaten takeaway on the counter, while pleading for assistance. It seemed unreal. I already knew what had happened, even if my dad tried to explain it. Noah was probably too ashamed to acknowledge that he didn't know how to fix something that wasn't in Excel, so he tried to fix it, failed badly, and then abandoned them. My mother muttered, "We are unable to even access our joint savings. Our mortgage payment was late. Late costs are being assessed to us." "That sounds terrible," I answered. "You must feel very trapped." When she raised her head, the outrage had vanished. Her voice wavered a little. "I apologize," she said. I blinked, not aggressively, not passively, not with any restrictions. "I apologize." "We didn't realize how much you were doing," my dad continued. "We believed we were being kind by allowing you to stay with us, but we failed to observe it." The dam cracked then, not for them, but for me. It all came out, all the burden I had been carrying, all the hurt, guilt, and hidden resentment. Not shouting, not crying, just the facts. I described to them what it was like to be compared to Noah all the time, to be viewed as a failure despite my best efforts to survive, how their approbation never seemed to be based on effort but rather on performance, and how I realized how disposable I was to them after being expelled, which was more than just embarrassing. My mother sat motionless, taking in every word as if it were painful. She complained, "I had no idea. I think she's real, in a way." She probably didn't want to know. There is a distinction. I was invited to return to assist, to restart everything. They claimed to compensate me for my time, claimed that things would change. I shook my head though. "I'll show you how to fix everything. I'll compose the guidelines. However, I will not be returning. I work. I'm under a lease. I am at peace." They appeared taken aback, as though this little studio apartment was a kind of defiance. But it was a haven for me. I sat them down after grabbing my laptop, fixing everything, including resetting access, confirming identification, and contacting tech support. It took 2 hours. Most of the time, my mother was quiet. Every time he had to respond to a new security question, my dad would mumble to himself, "This is ridiculous." After we were finished, I shut down the laptop and got up. I said, "I'll forward that instruction document, but I'm done after that. Administrator access is no longer available. Being the silent tech support is over. You are grown-ups. You will discover the solution." They also stood. My father gave a nod that was nearly courteous. My mother didn't say anything more, but it seemed like she wanted to. And I experienced freedom, something I hadn't felt in a long time, as they left. I would like to say that was the end of it, that they were mindful of my boundaries, that we all went on with renewed respect when they learned their lesson. But it takes time for families like mine to transform. They didn't suddenly become self-aware or humble by flipping a switch. The full story starts with what actually transpired next. I began receiving strange messages 2 weeks after they moved out of my place. No, not from my folks. To my amazement, they actually left me alone for a bit. It came from others in their vicinity. On Facebook, my Aunt Margaret sent me a message, "Hey sweetie, heard you moved out on your own. That's so great. Susan said you've been distant lately. Just wanted to check in. Everything okay?" Then I received a screenshot from my cousin Liam showing my mum going off in a group chat. I think Ethan's being manipulated by his new job. He's different, cold, distant. I don't even recognize him anymore. All I did was ask for help, and he acted like I'd kidnapped him. Noah came next. He wrote me a lengthy, conceited email. "Hey man, I understand that there has been conflict, but I believe you need to accept some responsibility. Even though mom and dad aren't flawless, they are still our parents. So perhaps you should be more understanding rather than placing the blame on them. We all go through difficult times. It doesn't mean that everything is against you. Let's talk soon, perhaps over coffee. I didn't respond and erased it. You see, this wasn't about one argument, one insult, or one terrible day. And that's what none of them understood, what still didn't click. Years passed being the default assistant for years. Despite being extremely tech-savvy, the person was never welcome to the adult table. While Noah's every modest victory was lauded as though he had cured cancer, I spent years watching my triumphs be dismissed. Noah received pricey watches and family dinners, but the birthday card said, "Perhaps next year will be better. Death by 1,000 small wounds." I didn't seek retribution, though, not the dramatic, trivial sort, where you hack into someone's social media accounts or damage their credit. I desired something far more permanent: separation, self-respect, and the fulfillment that comes from creating a life without them at its core. That chance arrived sooner than anticipated. My company revealed that they were creating a satellite office in Toronto and growing its remote division approximately a month after our previous conversation. A few of us were given relocation bonuses, and I took advantage of it. A new beginning, a brand new city, no family visitors. I leased a modest one-bedroom apartment in the heart of the city, with a view of the skyline and a desk in the corner. It was mine, although it wasn't particularly showy. Not a dime of assistance from those who referred to me as a leech, paid for by a job I earned. Before I went, I sent my folks one last email. I wanted to be transparent, not because I owed them anything. Subject revised. Hello, parents. I wanted to inform you of my impending relocation to Toronto for work. Going forward, I won't be available to assist with any problems, technical matters, account access, or anything else. I promise you have complete control because I have disassociated myself from everything. I hope we may all find some serenity in this new chapter. Be careful, Ethan. No answer, no thumbs up at all. And it may have hurt in the past, but not now. Toronto fulfilled all of my expectations. I rapidly made friends, joined a local coding group, and began volunteering at a non-profit that promotes computer literacy among senior citizens. Whenever I sat down to instruct a grandmother on how to configure two-factor authentication, I thought, this is what patience looks like. This is what respect feels like. At home, the fissures continued to widen. My unofficial family reporter, Sophia, informed me that my mum had begun attempting to persuade Noah to perform some of the duties I had previously performed. He claimed to be overly occupied. She continued to try to guilt him in spite of it. She once remarked to Noah, "Ethan used to handle all this without complaining." "Then maybe you shouldn't have treated him like garbage," he retorted. It seems that their golden boy had his limitations as well. Then the worst part arrived. On their taxes, my dad made a mistake, a large one. An audit was initiated when he inadvertently entered their mortgage interest in the incorrect part of the form, just enough of a red flag to need them to go back and refile and speak with the IRS regarding years' worth of inconsistencies, but not enough to warrant a frightening federal probe. They attempted to contact the tax software provider, but to their astonishment, they were unable to access the recovery email. Since I had shuttered it after severing links, it was now permanently disabled. They needed an accountant, an actual one, who didn't answer texts at midnight and charged $150 per hour. However, the money wasn't the true source of the anguish. The control was the issue. They were accustomed to always having someone nearby, someone who, out of fear, shame, or a great need for acceptance, would make things right instantly. That individual is no longer with us. They didn't even inform me about the audit. It was Sophia, of course, who told me. "Your mum's been in a bad mood for days. Dad messed up the taxes." She argued something like, "If the leech was still around, this wouldn't have happened." Lol. It dawned on me then. She continued to refer to me as the leech, despite everything. Of course, not in front of me, but behind closed doors, in the security of those she believed would support her. And that ought to have been painful. It ought to have caused the wound to reopen. However, it didn't, because I had evidence by then, evidence that her perception of me was false. I had a fulfilling job, friends who held me in high regard, a landlord who had faith in me, a group that depended on me, a name on a lease, a bank account, a life in digital form that was entirely independent. And on a cold Toronto evening, in the solitude of my apartment, I sat down at my desk, accessed my old Google Drive, and erased the final shared folder I had ever made for my parents. The title of it was Do Not Delete, Banking for Parents. With a single click, I removed it. Then I grinned. Since leeches don't create lives, individuals do. And I, at last, recognized myself. Thanks for watching and being part of the drama. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a wild new story.